My name is Matthew Ward, and tonight I want to talk about an empire. First and foremost, what is an empire? Well, Dictionary.com defines it as a group of nations or peoples ruled over by an emperor, empress, or other powerful form of government, usually a territory of greater extent than a kingdom, as the form of British, French, Russian, Byzantine, or Roman empires. Now, the previous empires I just listed have two things in common. They were A, very powerful, and B, didn't last forever. I mention this because at the end of World War II, another new empire was being formed, the American Empire. At the advent of World War II, America was grinding the gears of the Allied war machine. Our production and military capabilities were unmatched, and we proved it by changing the outcome of the war. Then began the Cold War, where the largest arms race in history began, leaving the American gears spinning at an even more uncontrollable rate. The Cold War left America with an army so large and grandiose. When the music stopped, there were still people dancing on foreign scents. The Soviet Union's collapse in the early 1990s meant the United States stood alone as the only world power still in existence. Fast forward to today, the United States still stands as the #1 military presence in the world. We cannot be matched in terms of deployment capabilities, technological advancements, and global alliances. But our strength is also our weakness. The maintenance cost of having the best is harmful to America and its citizens. We disregard international concerns and act as bullies to other nations that get in our way. Our infrastructure is in ruins and resembles a third world country. This is why I'm claiming that America has become an unruly empire. And just like the ones that came before it, the gears cannot spin forever. I've broken my reasoning into several secondary claims, which I will now go over. My first point is that military expenditures are out of control. According to the CIA handbook, published in 2008, America currently operates 702 military bases in 130 countries. Now, I'm a little skeptical on these actual statistics. Most likely there's secret bases around the world that they're not really saying. Military spending for 2008 reached $711 billion. Now let that sink in for just 1 second. $711 billion. That's approximately 48% of the entire world's military budget. We are one country. We spend 50% of the world's military budget. To put that another way, the U.S. military spending is 5.8 times more than China, 10.2 times more than Russia, and 98.6 times more than Iran. So the real question is, who's the real world? My second point is that America has damaged its global image. In 2003, we invaded Iraq without UN authorization. I feel that's kind of like a backhand slap to the UN. What's the point of being a part of the United Nations if we're not going to listen to any resolutions they pass? The Guinness Book of World Records actually lists anti-war protests as being the largest ever recorded in history, at 6 to 10 million people across 800 cities worldwide, just protesting the war in Iraq. And the final point that damages America's global image is the Guantanamo Bay scandal. For those of you that don't know, Guantanamo Bay is a military base in Cuba, and we send suspected terrorists there to be investigated. But realistically, I feel like the majority of people being sent to these bases didn't have anything to do with these terrorist acts, and they were held there without a trial. How can we preach to the world like freedom and equality if we're not doing the same? And my final point is the United States neglects its own citizens' welfare. All across America, roads, dams, levees, they remain outdated and damaged. Hurricane Katrina showed our vulnerability. Had the levee in New Orleans been inspected correctly, we could have avoided the disaster. The report card for America, located at infrastructurereportcard.org, comes out with an annual report published by the American Society of Civil Engineers. And this is the report card for 2009, if you guys can see it. But the average grade we received was a D across 15 diverse categories. Our highest grade was in solid waste management, which we received a C+. And, I'm going to read some. Aviation, we received a D. Drinking water, we received a D-, and our schools received a D as well. So, us being the most powerful nation in the world, how can we preach to the world, about, freedom and, all our values when, our country is starting to look like a third world country at the moment, The estimated cost to bring America back up to standard is $2.2 trillion, and this is over a 5-year investment. Put that another way, America spends only 2.4% of its GDP on infrastructure. In comparison, China and Europe spend 9 and 5% respectively. My question is, why isn't America spending more money on its own infrastructure and wasting so much money on these wars that don't accomplish anything? Let me reiterate my position. I love America. Both my mother and father came here and we were searching for the American dream. My question is, what sort of dream are we leaving for our children and future generations? America has been riding the coattails of World War II for too long. It's time we change direction. President Obama is a reassuring assessment of the American people's disgust and intolerance to empire-like behavior. You know, we cannot change overnight, but the seeds of change are growing. America needs to wake up and realize it cannot control the world with its military presence any longer. We must rise up and influence the world by examples and not force. Money spent on meaningless wars has to stop. Instead, it should be invested back home in the people where it matters. I want to conclude my claimed facts with a quote written by contemporary American poet Anthony Wolfe. He says, "America's greatest strength and its greatest weakness is our belief in second chances. Our belief that we can always start over, that things can be made better." Thank you for your time. And, have one.
All right, you spend time defining the concept. You don't really get to the claim until 1:40 into the speech, so I think it needs to come a little bit earlier. You don't lay out what the structure is going to be, but you do signpost those points when you get to them in the internal part of the speech. There's a lot of background information on history, trying to give us a context for the argument, and I thought that was okay, but I think there's also a lot of assumptions in the argument that need to be developed. For instance, the value of the UN endorsement of the war. There's an assumption about the meaningless of the war. That's a value claim, and so you're going to need to provide some explanation about how the resources were wasted or it's useless. And I think that the problem here is that you've got a big argument that you're trying to make, and there might be too many points to it to get into a short speech like this. On Guantanamo Bay, for instance, you largely just kind of give a brief description of what's going on, but we got no data, we've got no authorities, we've got no examples that you're citing here, and that shouldn't have been hard for you to find since you have an understanding of what's going on there, but we're not getting any citation of that. The best part of the argument is the information that talks about our own infrastructure and the difficulties that we have in funding those kinds of things. You had some good statistical information making comparisons between U.S. funding on defense issues versus domestic infrastructure issues. It seems to be implied that there is a trade-off on those two things, and I think you need to develop that argument a little bit more, that there is in fact a consequence that is related to the spending issue. The link to Katrina, for instance, I think is largely asserted, and it could be a lot stronger. You need to project your voice a little bit more, and I think, let me see, there was one other thing I was going to... I guess that's about as far as I'm going to get right now. We've got to move on. We've got...